Cinema is Coming to an End is one of those titles you come up with in this day and age of content creation that's not necessarily clickbait, but can still put that poor taste in people's mouths as if it were. The problem is, we very well could be looking at the end of the true movie-going experience. For anyone living under a rock, news broke on December 5th that Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery entered a deal for an acquisition of Warner Bros. Worth $82.7 billion. Most people weren't too happy about the deal, but mainly because it's Netflix, not what it actually entails. Netflix very much has a quantity over quality problem. That's not to say they're incapable of making something great, but the vast majority of Netflix-ran productions just aren't good, and that's pretty much where most of the fears people have of this deal stop. On multiple occasions, Netflix's CEO has made it abundantly clear his stance on theatrical releases when it comes to film. He's had a fair amount to say, but the most damning has to absolutely be, folks grew up thinking, I want to make movies in a gigantic screen and have strangers watch them play in a theater. It's an outdated concept. In the same Variety article, there's a point where he says it's completely out of step with the consumer experience of just loving a movie. He, along with presumably most of the leadership at Netflix, seem to be tunnel vision on the actual platform of Netflix and accessibility to the media on it rather than creating something of genuine substance. From a pure business perspective, it makes sense. The more people stay home, the more money Netflix makes because of their catalog. The acquisition of Warner Bros. Simply fuels the flame of an already massive catalog, adding all of DC, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc., making it one of the deepest archives of film and probably the easiest way to access them. So what exactly makes this acquisition a problem? Consumers get more value for their subscription services, combining after complaining about essentially the rise of cable pricing once more. A deeper catalog of movies and shows are more accessible than ever, and simply the potential joining of two of media's biggest conglomerates. First, anyone believing Netflix doesn't get even more expensive is entirely naive. They aren't afraid of raising prices with the platform's current state, let alone adding some of cinema's best films ever. At the end of the day, they are a business and they need the ends to justify the means of spending $83 billion. Second, and this sort of lends to the entire point of this video, this would essentially monopolize yet another massive part of an industry that already has multi-billion-dollar companies holding ownership over various studios. Amazon's acquisition over MGM, Disney over Fox, Marvel, Star Wars, now Netflix over Warner Bros. Competition is the cornerstone of breeding greatness. It's what drives any great business, any great plan, any great person. It forces anything and anyone to provide the greatest possible product or outcome only because they're competing for your attention, our attention. Without it, creativity suffers. Creativity suffering means we don't get anything of substance, which is already in a scarce state, and if we don't get anything of substance, nothing is thought-provoking. This specific topic is for another time, but especially with the rise of AI, the time for creativity has never been higher. The possible, eventual lack of competition is just one half of the overall problem. The other half, possibly more important, is how this affects the actual movie theater experience. Knowing Netflix's intention on the theatrical release and window of a film, it's absolutely scary knowing that films like The Batman, Dune Part 1 and 2, Sinners One Battle After Another, all major Warner Bros. Critical hits could have been experienced on nothing besides motion smoothing 65-inch LED screens. IMAX is all the craze at the moment, and as you may have seen at the start of this video, I got the opportunity to watch One Battle After Another in 70mm. I already thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of the movie, so I wasn't expecting much going into it, but having seen it, it's something special. Allow me to glaze for just a minute, but this film managed to utilize every single part of a format that is quite literally larger than life. It was almost overwhelming getting to experience an already great film in a fairly new format. It allows you to honestly acknowledge what directors' intentions are with their shots, and in the case of One Battle, how they're utilizing the format and how exact a vision can be a movie. These are simply things you cannot pick up sitting at home in comfort. We go to the movies as a form of camaraderie and escapism. While I can't speak for everyone, for me, there's an innate sense of mysticism in the air when I go to a theater. You gather in a room with strangers and for 2 hours, sometimes more, share something in common with dozens of people you're never going to meet again. You take something from that film or from that experience that is just so important and precious. You are transported into these little pocket dimensions where time doesn't matter, just what's in front of you. There's this documentary on Apple TV Plus about one of the greatest directors of all time, Martin Scorsese. In the very first episode, we learned Scorsese was very asthmatic and pretty much needed a movie theater as it was the only air-conditioned place he could be. He developed his love for films there, keeping him mostly out of harm's way, giving us possibly one of the greatest directors to ever put his hands on a camera. Now, by no means am I shitting on Netflix, there's nothing that can be achieved there if I'm doing so. I simply believe that the very action of shortening the theatrical window or eliminating it entirely would effectively be the death of real cinema. There's no denying the convenience and accessibility that streaming provides to us as consumers. Some of my favorite films have come to me as a result of having said services, but to forego the entire theatrical experience, everything it stands for, everything that entails, could legitimately kill an industry already fighting an uphill battle against countless other obstacles. This proposed deal has to go through multiple levels of government approval before it's truly finalized, and it may take years before that happens, if it does, but I'm going to choose to be hopeful. Netflix has walked back previous statements made by their CEO, saying they don't intend on eliminating theatrical releases, so that's a good sign, but honestly, who knows? My only advice, go watch a movie. New, old, doesn't matter. Local theaters are always playing something classic, so who knows? You may just catch something you like.